Poultry farming includes laying hens, broiler or meat chickens, ducks and geese bred for pâté de foie gras production and for down production, turkeys bred for Thanksgiving and other turkey consumption, and a variety of other birds as well. Chickens would naturally have inhabited a forested environment where they would be scratching and foraging and exploring the forest floor, pecking at the leaf litter and generally interacting with their environment. In the highly confined environments on intensive farms, they don't have the opportunity to perform these behaviours. They're crowded into very small spaces, large numbers of other birds, with very little environmental stimulation. Other activities that chickens and other poultry are often unable to perform on intensive farms are nest building, and that's really important to birds when they're about to lay an egg, perching, flapping their wings, engaging in normal social interactions, bathing in water for ducks. One of the biggest animal welfare problems is the male chicks that are produced and killed at about 1 day of age, because there are vast numbers of laying hens that are used every year, and these tend to become exhausted after intensive egg production for 1 to 2 years and are then sent to slaughter, so they have to be replaced on a regular basis. The eggs that hatch out, 50% of them of course are going to be male, and they can't lay eggs, and they're not the right breed to be used for meat production because they grow too slowly. So they're killed, and they're killed via gassing or suffocation if they're thrown into garbage bags, or maceration, which is where they're put into essentially machines very much like wood chippers. The traditional battery cage, where 6 to 8 hens are crammed into a single cage with very little space each, has been banned in many jurisdictions in favour of larger furnished cages, sometimes called colony cages. These can house up to 60 or 80 birds in a single cage. They have to have perching areas, they have to have the scratching area, and they have to have a nest. The trouble is there may be only one nesting area for 60 to 80 birds, and the scratching and foraging area is also very small. Hens are highly motivated to peck and forage in what would have been the forest floor that they've come from. Without very much in the cage to explore, they're forced to start to peck one another. In nature, subordinate chickens would have been able to escape more dominant ones. In the cages, they're not able to escape, and they get a lot of feather loss. Now, when a little bit of bleeding can occur, this can stimulate more pecking in that area because it's a different colour to the drab greyness that so much of the other environment is, and this can and does lead to outbreaks of cannibalism. One of the reasons that the very small cages were introduced in the first place is to try to limit these outbreaks to a small number of birds when they did happen. In order to prevent the outbreaks of cannibalism that would otherwise sweep through laying hen flocks, it's normal to de-beak laying chickens. So this involves removing a quarter to a third of the upper beak, or the upper and the lower beaks, using a hot blade, a cold blade, electricity or infrared. Now, the beak is full of nerve endings, and all of these procedures are acutely painful to the birds, and unfortunately painkillers aren't usually given because of the costs. Unfortunately, it also results in chronic pain, because once the birds recover from the initial procedure and there is a fibrous scar over the end of the beak, the nerve fibres that have been cut grow towards the scar, they hit the scar and they turn around and grow back upon themselves, forming a tangled mass or a neuroma, which tends to spontaneously discharge pain signals. So this results in long-term chronic pain, similar to the sort of the phantom pain or the stump pain that amputees would experience. Because meat chickens have been bred over many generations to grow really quickly, it's very difficult for their heart and circulatory systems and their skeletal systems to keep up with the really rapid rate of growth. And what this means is that the birds have a tendency to become lame as they get heavier. It becomes painful for them to move, so they start to lie upon the litter floor in the barns in which they're raised for longer and longer periods. Now, these litter floors also become increasingly contaminated with urine and faeces, and it tends to result in chemical burns actually occurring to the chickens' legs and feet and to the breasts of the chickens, and these are very characteristic painful looking lesions. The other thing that can occur is that it's common for the heart to simply give out in a proportion of these chickens, and a proportion of them will literally just drop dead and die suddenly prior to the roughly 4 weeks at which they're normally rounded up and taken to slaughter. Because of the vast numbers of laying hens and the severity of their spatial restriction and the lack of environmental enrichment they're provided, the intensive farming of laying hens is the most serious animal welfare concern that exists today.